Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
This is a perfect day. Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Eggs. Today we have a couple special guests. And actually, another podcast that records out of the studio is a supplement group called NXT. And as I've been working with them over the last, 3-4 months, I've felt inclined that we need to get them on our show and talk about their story because I think it's important and I think it's a good story. With me today, I have Jason Peterson, Patrick Shields, and Rachel Jones. Jason's the CEO, Patrick is the COO, and Rachel is the CNO for Chief Nutritional Officer, right?
Right.
And I'm really excited to get them on, so please join us in welcoming the NXT crew.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Let's get a little bit of backstory on you guys. You kind of came together as a company in 2016. Do you guys
Correct.
want to talk about the process of how that happened?
Absolutely. You want to?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on that. Yeah, my background is I'm just an old beat-up football player, so I was very used to taking supplements and took pretty much everything on the planet with varied success. Some were better than others. Then I moved on into my professional career where I met Pat, and we had a long-standing professional relationship. And actually, it was one day at the gym, we were saying, hey, we were talking about supplements, and we were like, you know what, there's a lot of not-so-good stuff out there. Let's take our knowledge, let's take our understanding, and let's do something different. So that was the genesis of NXT.
Okay, so to that end, what's your background? What's your education like that qualified you guys for this sort of thing?
First, business. I have a bachelor's in business administration. Then, if you want to say, I got professional ADD. I went back to nursing school, and I had a lot of aha moments in nursing school because obviously I was learning about the body, the mind, how it functioned, what the body wants and how it assimilates nutrition. And that really turned on a lot of light bulbs in my head. So that's my background, aside from, using the supplements as an athlete. Really, it was nursing school that really gave me my foundation for the supplements.
Okay. Cool. And then how did Rachel and Patrick come into the picture?
Well, I came into the picture because when me and Jason kind of decided that, we were in the locker room.
Okay.
Yeah. Here we go, locker room story.
Yeah. I just couldn't stop looking at his body. But
I don't blame you. This is a handsome fella right here.
And then we met just outside the locker room.
Rachel was outside the door.
I was outside the door waiting to carry on the conversation. Jason and I have known each other for a long time, professionally and in the fitness community. I was a personal trainer. I'm a registered dietitian. And as fate would have it, I was working on a brain supplement and have been working on a brain supplement for a long time, and then combined forces with Peter, and we still needed another piece of the puzzle. So when I came across Jason and presented the idea, he was already working with the military.
Oh.
And we had this unicorn product, Peter and I, that we'd worked on with the University of Utah. It didn't have a home to sit in, but it was really important information because it was as effective as some antidepressants. So the information that the Brain Institute was holding on to was potent, very powerful, and could help a lot of people. In fact, people who went on these natural products didn't want to go off them at the end of the studies. And they were tested on every age range, from children to elderly.
Is this something you were working on before you guys met? And
it was for a long time.
Together. This is the Revive that
right.
you're talking about that came later.
Right. So I was a professor at the University of Utah, and suicide prevention is a big deal in the college atmosphere. And I wanted students to know that there was a biochemical basis for depression and anxiety that hit during college. So I brought the researchers down off the hill from the Brain Institute and had them talk to my undergrads about what they could do nutritionally to gear up for what was ahead in their undergrad studies and for, preparing them for mental health issues that were going to come up.
So were you recommending just like natural foods to eat before Revive came out, or was it more kind of like take this supplement with this supplement and this? And
that's a good question. Yeah. There are certain nutrients that the brain needs, and if it doesn't get enough of them, you're in a deficit. So, for example, one of the ingredients in Revive, only 8% of Americans get. So it's no wonder we have mental health issues and anxiety and depression at the rates we do. It's like our brains are starving, literally starving. And so when you have a starving brain, it's not processing the way it should. We actually did a Beck's depression score, which is a depression, just a survey that undergrads took before and after the semester. And we found a significant change in those who really implemented these specific natural ingredients into their diet. So they were reporting less anxiety, less depression. And that was in conjunction with the Brain Institute. And I thought, this is information that everybody needs to have. This is information that needs to be available to everybody, sure. Not just researchers.
Right. So is the problem like we're not getting these things because they're not in the food we eat? Like how come we're missing these vitamins and nutrients if they're so like important for us?
One of them is
how come we're not finding them?
Yeah, one of them, believe it or not, ironically, is in eggs, and choline is.
So yeah, I know that. We keep telling everyone they need the show, but they just won't.
They need the show. No, it's and studies, researchers for decades have known that people who don't get enough of this specific nutrient found in eggs are at a deficit, and it can pass on generationally. So babies who are born to moms who don't have enough of this nutrient choline that's in eggs pass that deficit onto their children, and then they see like lower IQs, higher attention deficit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
is that anything to do with like sort of the way that we farm and the way we produce food here? And the only reason I ask, and I don't know if it makes any difference, I'm not a scientist, I don't know anything, but the one egg story thing that I have. So we have a little office over in Barcelona too. So I go over there every now and then. And the eggs over there, the yolk in them is like orange,
right.
like Crayola
right.
orange. And when you eat an egg in Spain, it like you can feel the nutrition.
Absolutely,
like it's the most insane thing ever. Versus like our little dopey yellow eggs.
You're exactly right.
And so I wonder, because they're not allowed to do GMOs and a lot of things like that in Europe. I wonder if it's actually down to the way that we're processing our foods,
100%.
And bulk farming eggs.
Absolutely,
and things like
correct.
And we have a really limited report in terms of nutrient density and nutritionally dense food. So I've been in Europe several times over the last couple of years, and food is so critically important to the culture, as you know, that they don't teach nutrition. Like my colleagues in Italy, they are dumbfounded that we have to teach nutrition over here because it's actually part of the culture. So eating.
Well, it's funny because as part of our family, and I won't give you the whole long backstory, but we've hosted interns from Spain, intern teachers 3 times now. And so we've become, of course, very, acclimated to Spanish culture and things like that. And it's funny because when they come over here, they, of course, love all the yummy food we have here in the box. Everything's in a box and everything is like processed, And so they all enjoy it. But then like halfway through the year, they kind of fall out of favor with all of it, and they go, "Oh my God, I miss food." Like
Yes.
everything here comes in a box, everything here is packaged, everything is whatever. They all put on a lot of weight
Right.
and things like that. And then as soon as they go home, it's like they snap right back to it, And
Yeah,
so
because it's part of who
funny.
they are.
Yeah, and it's not like they eat less food.
No.
But they're just eating maybe better quality food, and I don't know how much of it has to do with their schedule and things like that. They have kind of a different schedule, but
Well, food is part of the culture. And I taught at the university a course called Cultural Aspects of Food. And I found the same thing. Students from all over the world, whether it was South America or Europe, they didn't know how to eat when they came here to the United States. Like they could not figure out how to eat. So a lot of them would go without essential nutrients. We've been going without essential nutrients for decades. And so I think that is why these two came together, is they were realizing like, it doesn't need to be complicated. We can put together some really clean, simple supplements that do just that. A supplement is a supplement. It doesn't replace a good diet. But by not getting these essential nutrients, you're going to put yourself in jeopardy for a lot of serious ailments and diseases.
Well, it
and
makes sense. And, it's funny because just pre-show, of course, people didn't have the opportunity to hear this part, but we were talking a little bit about this brain fog. And for me, and, I'm a creative guy. I burn the midnight oil all the time. I'm up late. I get up early, all that stuff. So I don't know how much of it's just sleep deprivation. But I experience that fog stuff all the time. And I know that, the next set products seem to be appealing with folks with PTSD and other cognitive issues and stuff like that. But that really touched base for me. I don't know. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that for people who, experience this kind of brain fog thing? Like, what is that? What causes that, and how does the next set product line help that?
Sure. Rachel pretty much explained very well what and why we have brain fog, the lack of nutrition, and just how we eat and how we process the processed foods leaves us in a deficit position mentally. So when we talk about brain fog, it's that feeling where I can't quite concentrate. I can't quite get this concept. I can't quite think through something. That's because the neurotransmitters in our brain are all mucked up, for lack of a better technical term. And what our supplements do is feed the brain antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, oxygen, blood flow to clean out all that garbage, if you will, and get our brain functioning in the best manner possible, to eliminate the brain fog, to get our brain to be able to process information, to think clearly. And like Rachel said, it's when you boil it down, it's pretty simple. It's vitamins, it's minerals, it's the basics of nutrition. And like Rachel mentioned, we as Americans don't understand that because our food is highly processed. So the brain fog comes from a lot of things.
Yeah, no, it's really funny because like I said, just from being around all these Spanish people, I've spent a lot of time talking to them about food and nutrition and things like that. And when I go to them and I tell them that I just flat don't know how to eat, because like I'm a guy that struggled with my weight my whole life. I've done one thing after another to try and, drop some pounds and stuff. And, but like I've literally gone to them and just said, like, I don't know how to eat food. Like, what a dumb thing to say, but it's true. Like, we get such mixed messages in this country, and like every week it's a new diet trend, or every new week, it's something.
Well, our food system and our diet system in general is based on Wall Street. Basically, our food system is linked to,
processed grain, sugars, the
we're
market. Yeah.
We're not too far off from the pharmaceutical industry, right? When it comes to our food and how it's processed and who owns those companies. And once you trace that, it's really interesting when you do trace it, because it's only a few companies.
If you look at is it the food pyramid that was huge back in the 80s and 90s? It was grains and stuff that was commodities.
And I was in the room when they were fighting over that.
Bidders.
Yeah, I was in Washington, D.C. when they were fighting over jockeying for position, over who was going to get the positioning. And it's based on lobbying efforts, right? I mean, you look at it, and that pyramid is based on special interests. It doesn't necessarily line up with what's necessarily best for a human body. It lines up with what's best for Wall Street.
Yeah. So and actually, Ren, I got to say you've been doing a pretty good job of eating healthy and taking care.
I'm doing quite a bit of stuff right now. I mean, I'm down, I don't know, maybe 30 in this last effort, but like 60 overall from
Awesome.
my
That's
high.
good.
Yeah.
And basically all I've done is just restricted sugar.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you're talking about all this stuff because, I was eating more or less a standard American diet. Like I'm not big on sweets or anything, but it's all that hidden crap, right? And
Right.
so we're just very carb restricted. We call it keto-ish because I'm not going to pee on a strip or whatever. I'm not going to go that
Yeah.
far. This thing has to be. I have to be able to live with this, right? And so I'm not going that far. But we've basically restricted that. Plus, we're also doing intermittent fasting.
That's great.
And I've noticed that both those things had a good effect on my weight and also had a good effect on my cognition largely. But this idea of the brain fog or whatever, I mean, I seriously 3 times a day will have something like that where I go, why am I standing here? What is happening right now? Happens all the time.
Think of your brain as a muscle. It's tissue, right? So it needs blood flow, it needs oxygen, it needs nutrients. So we at NXT treat the brain like a muscle. You need to feed it. If you're not feeding it, you're getting less than optimum performance. So the stack, as we call it, does just that. It's going to give your brain all the necessary vitamins, minerals, trace elements, oxygen, blood flow, everything it needs to be healthy and function at its best. So that mid-afternoon brain fog, you won't have it.
And not everybody has it. Like it's
True.
kind of an American
True.
thing. It
Right.
really is. I mean, traveling the world, you see how people deal with like ebbs and flows of energy levels, right? They don't try to like blast throughout the day. It's like they take on purpose, like breaks to eat healthy food.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's one of those, I think, cultural things too, is that, I mean, they're going to green light a nap, man.
Right.
But that's not a super American thing to do. I mean, the idea here is work through it and power through. I mean, between me and my wife, I mean, we drink like a gallon of coffee a day. I mean, it's all day coffee, I mean, the fact that I don't have one in here, you missed the last 2, but I had coffee. And so, I mean, but it's all day, trying to keep things moving and trying to keep stuff going. And I've been doing a lot better. I mean, in my case, I've been doing a lot better about getting more sleep and things like
That's
that. So
great.
I'm working on it.
That's such an important part of like.
But it's funny because you just don't even think about it.
Yeah, weight management has everything to do with sleep.
Really?
Everything to do with sleep.
Cortisol.
So your brain rewires all of those hormones several times during the day. It's like a reboot, a computer reboot. And when you take breaks and just stop what you're doing and give your brain a chance to just decompress, and it's kind of like
Does that include like not watching TV? Or having that kind of stuff in the background? I mean, like your brain's still going.
Right,
It's
really training yourself to in these meditative techniques. That it really does allow all your biochemistry to rewire and recenter back to normal. And when we just push through and just caffeinate up and keep going, and we're sleep deprived, we don't give our brains a chance. You have specific glands in your brain that are designed to control your weight, and so allowing like the restoration of these, your adrenal glands and your cortisol to reset. People who know this do it. Like people who like in the nutrition community who know it well. Like I'm the same weight I was in college, and I don't diet and I don't eat funky foods. But for me, it's managing those energy levels and understanding that there are times throughout the day where you really need to reset that. Learn to meditate, and it doesn't have to be like the yoga Bikram way.
Full blown.
If you can just take 10 seconds
Good.
during
I was
the
going
day.
to say, because I am not that flexible. I have a hard time with that whole leg folded and cramped over.
Don't have to do that.
Yeah, 10 minutes into it, my back starts hurting and I'm done.
But just taking a few minutes during the day to just breathe on purpose, breathe and oxygenate your brain. Like Jason said, like your brain burns 20% of the calories of your entire body during the day. So it's
Really?
very, very energy inefficient. It's a burning machine. So you're not allowing that energy to properly be burned. You're not allowing the nutrients to get into the brain. You're not allowing oxygen flow. It's really like you're starving your most important element.
Well, and back to what you were talking about with it being a muscle, thinking about it in those terms, that you're actually starving it or depriving your brain of having, whatever it is that it needs to do its job. I mean, it makes perfect sense that you might need to supplement if you can't take care of those other things, although maybe ideally if you could meditate every now and then, that wouldn't be the worst thing ever. So let's kind of shift back and get kind of back on track. Sorry, I took us on this weird food tangent, but but I think it's really good information and good foundational evidence for what we're talking about here. So let's talk a little bit about, Mike referenced earlier the stack, and we were talking about the different products. Let's talk about each of those and how they work differently and how they sort of offset one another.
Well, you had been working on the first 3 supplements before you met Rachel, and then Revive kind of came out of your collaboration. You want to talk about the process of getting what you were working on going, and then how it changed once you guys came together?
Sure. In the very beginning, like we said, we wanted to build a better mousetrap. So we took the body through pre-exertion, exertion, recovery. And that came with our stack, SAT 1, 2, and 3. So if you want to put it in exercise context, SAT 1 is pre-workout. What are we trying to do with our body before we actually exercise? We need to get it ready. So we want maximum oxygen, blood flow, nutrients to the body, right? Well, most or a vast majority of pre-workouts are what? Straight caffeine, sugar. Mm-hmm. And what does caffeine do?
Constricts the vessels.
Correct. So it's actually doing the exact opposite of what we want our body to do. Mm-hmm. So our pre-workout is very low stimulant. We only have 100 milligrams of caffeine, which is about the same as a cup of coffee. And we get our energy from vitamin B6, B12, B5, and a Chinese berry extract called Schizandra. It actually releases enzymes in the liver that speeds up biochemical reactions.
Interesting.
So we also use vitamin C, which most people are like, well, I don't have a cold. Why would I use vitamin C? Vitamin C is very important in muscle protection and support. So we want to get the body ready for action. That is SAT 1 charge. So now we're into our exertion or our exercise or whatever we're doing, right? Well, what do we need? We need to continue energy. So branched chain amino acids, very important in protein synthesis, for power, for energy. We do electrolytes for fluid balance. There you go. You can now power through whatever you're trying to do. And as we've been talking, we've kind of come to the conclusion, right? Recovery, recovery, recovery. So we spent an enormous amount of time on our third product, Repair. The best way I can describe Repair is a multivitamin on the biggest, baddest dose of steroids you could possibly think.
So just a little bit of everything in there.
This time, there's no steroids.
We are steroid free.
Oh.
The idea is the faster you can get your body into repair mode, as Rachel was talking about earlier, the better your body will repair. You'll repair faster, stronger, better, right? So we put all of the necessary trace elements, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, antioxidants into our recovery so the body can get maximum absorption and get going with repairing the body the most efficient way possible. So that's was our foundation, and that's where we started. And when we took off and it was doing very well, we didn't address the mental aspect of it at that point. The military got wind of us, and they liked it because it was low stimulant. And you got guys over in the Middle East who are already pretty wired, pretty tight.
Yeah, they don't need any extra
they don't
stimulation,
need any extra
I don't think.
help. No. So we sent a whole bunch of stuff over with them, with the 19th Airborne here in Camp Williams. They're great guys, and they loved it. Well, during that deployment, we kind of got to peel back the layers behind the curtain with these guys, and they kind of let their guard down. And that's where we got our first glimpse at the PTSD issues that they face. And they don't want to pop pills. They don't want to take medications. They don't want to be on antipsychotics. And they basically just said, hey, we like your stuff. Can you help us out? So that's when Rachel came back into my life after, 7-10-year hiatus.
Yeah.
We happened to just bump into each other at the gym, and the brainstorm came, and Rachel had been working on her brain chow, as we call it. And Revive was actually born that day. And we started formalization and testing and moving forward with Revive. And when we got it to the guys in the military, we saw almost immediate change in their mental status.
So mind you that like this had all been studied in depth at Harvard and the University of Utah. So we weren't using these guys as guinea pigs.
Yeah. Sure.
We were like,
Yeah, I'm sure the Army's a little protective of
Yeah.
their guys. They're probably not going to let you go too guinea pig on the dudes in the the trenches out there.
Rachel had 4 or 5 university studies done on this product before we had even met. So it was pretty well vetted out before.
Well, I think what's interesting to me is, and maybe this is just me as somebody totally outside of the industry, but obviously even those first, the first 3 steps that we were talking about, or the first 3 sets, it really feels like if you were starting to build a business around that stuff, your target would be fitness and bodybuilders and guys looking for that stuff. The fact that you were able to, by way of the Army, who was probably just looking for fitness, supplement for their guys who are out, working out every day and all that stuff. The fact that you were sort of able to walk into this, and probably, I guess it depends, who you ask, but it seems like a far more important venture, which is cognitive health and recovery for people, in service who have PTSD and other problems that come from being in service. The fact that you were sort of able to land on that, I think, is such an important differentiator between you guys and every other supplement on the block. Because I've heard of, nootropics and things like that people try and put out for brain power. But the fact that you were able to actually get this in the hands of the people who need it probably most, and, do that in addition to the good that came from set 1, 2, and 3 in terms of, getting ready for workout and post, during and after. I think having that sort of full set, start to finish, your physical health and your mental health, I think is pretty innovative.
Well, it was really interesting because we were on these parallel paths for so long. I had taken a bunch of classes at the law school, the moral injury of war, and I was involved in some veteran stuff at the University of Utah. And I'm a dietitian. I'm like, what? This isn't making sense. But when we started talking, Jason had been targeting the military, in the beginning, and then they'd kind of veered more into fitness. But
it was actually the military was the very beginning, the
Yeah.
very first ones, because we had friends in the military that we were telling them what they were doing, and they wanted to try it out and everything. And they had told us that's when one of them had told us that they've tried other things, but I think it was I don't know if this is the actual number, but he said the previous year 12 guys in their unit had died just from dehydration.
Oh, wow.
And so, in the overall nutrition to military members is lacking greatly. Like in their, what do you call those, commissaries? Or the stores where they buy stuff, they pretty much are just giving them Monsters and Red Bulls.
So,
Well, yeah,
stuff
it's
like
interesting.
that.
It feels
it's
like
just-
super Oregon Trail to be dying of dehydration.
Well, it really-
especially when you're there with the military. They should be taking care of those men, and men and women. And
it really was eye-opening for
that's
all of us.
interesting.
I studied the PTSD manual, the military PTSD manual, and basically says get your boots back on and get back on the field. It's really raw, and I'm thinking,
Well, it's funny, that almost feels like a vestige of the past, right? That feels like the way it was World War II, put your boots on and get back out there, son. You got to get back to work.
It's funny you say that because that's actually when the last time it was updated was World War II.
No way. Really?
Oh, interesting.
We've gotten so much better at war, unfortunately, with technology they are so far behind on addressing the mental and emotional and the physical well-being of their soldiers. To be quite honest, they didn't expect soldiers to come back. Well, we've gotten better at war, so now soldiers
more guys are coming home. yeah.
Correct, with these issues, and they honestly are quite vexed as to what to do with them.
Yeah.
So
it's a very serious problem. You used to lose a few million in the battle, and now you don't.
Now you don't.
You
But
you
they
might still lose many, but
But now they're coming
not like
home
you
with
did. Now they're coming
different
home,
issues.
and they have these problems, the longer term issues.
So and that spawned us, and when Rachel and I finally got revived to a point where the guys were taking it, it really laser focused us and galvanized our purpose. We saw a need, and we felt very fortunate, like you mentioned, to be in a position to help. And that's been our push ever since, is to get as much of the word out and awareness out to these veterans and active duty that there is an alternative. There is help. There is a safe place for them to go to address these issues and seek betterment. There is a possibility of, if you want to say, having a normal existence. Now, obviously, their new normal is not what their old normal was, but that experience, and it, like Rachel said, every day our eyes are open to new experiences.
My eyes have been opened in the last 2 months, just sitting here and sitting through your podcasts and hearing the before and after stories of people who, Mike last week was mind-boggling, and it's insanity. I being outside of the I don't see this every day. I don't have a lot of friends who are veterans. I don't work out. I don't take supplements. And just hearing the before and after stories, and it's night and day. It's insanity. Like, just go back and listen to a few of their episodes. Where can they find them?
They're on our website at nextsetsupplements.com /podcasts. And then we have
and that's
two series
NXT set, right?
NXT set.
And they are mind-blowing. I mean, I think that's really what we had no idea we were going to be able to make this much of a difference in the lives of our military personnel.
Well, it's interesting too, and it occurs to me that beyond just military, I mean, and it sounds bad to sort of denigrate like all of society, but so many of us have become very soft, just by nature of our society. Things are pretty easy nowadays, but now you're getting a lot of these kids, even young kids, being sort of diagnosed with depression and things like that they're attributing to cyberbullying or time online or in front of your phone or whatever. And so it seems like to have an option like this that's not a heavy medication, it's not prescription strength something that's going to alter the way these kids' brains develop or something over time, and to have something that's kind of a low grade stimulant like you were talking about, seems like it could be really helpful, not just for military who've actually had it very hard, but for people who might be a little softer, but it keeps them off of the sort of pharmaceutical route.
Well, we don't want to diagnose, and we don't want to treat, and we don't want to tell anybody to come off medication. What we have seen is that over and over, people describe a feeling of calmness and clarity that comes over them that they haven't had even with medication. So you can add this to medication. It's not contraindicated. And like I said, we would not want to take the place of any medication.
Yeah, somebody should put a disclaimer up. If we were more prepared, we'd have a disclaimer. No medical advice being spewed.
No medical advice. This
and
is
honestly,
food.
if you take any, it's on you, man.
Yeah, we're talking about concentrated food sources or raw ingredients that are concentrated to make a difference, that are supposed to be in your diet anyway. Once again, it's a supplement. This supplement's what's missing, and what's missing is greatly missing. Like I said, 92% of Americans are missing this nutrient on a daily basis. So you multiply that over time and years, and you've got a brain that's not functioning at high levels.
Right.
Well,
it's interesting. So you mentioned that choline is one of these things that we're not getting enough of. But how did, I don't know, pre-human, how did that guy get the choline? How do we know that that's the chemical we need?
Well,
does it come in other foods too, or is it?
It's in meat. When you're a hunter-gatherer, you're not eating leaves and sticks. You're going for meat, right?
Sure.
So you're going for high nutrient-dense foods. Fruits and vegetables are fine, but they're not going to sustain you if you're just in survival mode.
Right.
And really, truly, we are back in survival mode as a species. And I think really we need to focus on nutrient density. And that's, as an instructor at the University of Utah, that's what I taught my classes is look for nutrients. We're not so obsessed about foods, but where are you finding these nutrients? So,
right. And that makes sense, right? Because that's part of the rap against processed foods, right? Is that they're not as nutrient dense. There's a lot of fillers and things like that.
There's nothing in them.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to think. Somebody was talking to me the other day about veggie straws, right? Because I was like, oh, well, those are an option. They say veggie, right, in the name. They've got to be great. And I can't remember what it is, but it's something like less than 2% of vegetable in there. They're potato, whatever, but there's a green one that's supposed to be, broccoli or something, and then an orange one that's supposed to be carrot or whatever.
Marketing
but it's
awesome,
it couldn't be the tiniest little percentage of carrot,
right.
just enough to make it orange. That's it. And so it's pretty interesting. So that they can do that kind of thing.
Have you read the book, The Great Courses? It's a cultural culinary history,
Yeah,
and it's one of the
I taught
great
it.
courses. You taught it? I listened to it on an audiobook, and it was one of the most. I wouldn't think that it would be something I would be interested in, but as I got, you go through the hunter-gatherer, you go through how people changed and how our diets changed with it. And it's a very interesting read. It's very long, so I recommend the audiobook form, but you should check it out.
It's so cool. It's so
yeah.
fascinating. What I learned teaching that is humans eat anything and everything. All over the globe, we as a human species eat anything and everything.
Well, we must, because who was the guy that ate the first lobster? That was like, that must be eaten.
Right.
I mean, come on.
The thing I learned most, though, teaching a course on cultural nutrition is that in the United States, we do not like to share. And in sharing your food, there are so many reasons to share food. I wrote an article for the High Courts of India called Breaking Bread to Mend Fences. We're the only culture that doesn't start off a negotiation with some sort of food exchange, right? Like coffee or tea. But sharing food and breaking bread with others is really essential to the human
we were
condition.
talking about that on the podcast earlier today.
Yeah, really interesting. This
no
guy,
joke.
Yeah, we had a guest on. His name is Frank Cottle. And he's an old-time business guy. He's been at it for 40 years. He's developed all these companies and co-working. And we got into this whole Spain conversation and stuff like that, too. And I was talking about how, in my experience, I'd found in Spain, as we've looked for clients and things like that, like we're basically competing against their friends and their cousins and all these things. And
Right.
and they have to know you. Like and it's not superficial. Like here in the States, you might be able to get away with some emails and a phone call or maybe a Skype or something. But over there, man, they got to know you. It's got to be like legit. And so
It's community oriented.
yeah, and so, but he really dipped into this concept of breaking bread and how important it is to
so
have
essential.
that time for bonding and everything else.
Yeah.
Like it's a human experience. It's not that it's some kind of formality you go through. It's like it's a human thing.
It's
part
not
of being
optional.
human.
The neuroscience department at the University of Utah has figured out that when you're in a situation where you're offering and exchanging food, your defenses go down a little bit, like your defense mechanism. So in a negotiation situation, what I would do is I would bring out something where you're exchanging foods or coffee or tea with somebody before you want to start that negotiation.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just start keeping cake in a backpack.
Serious.
Because I think cake would be the winner. I think.
Here we're talking to a dietitian. Ryan.
Well,
I know. I'm just thinking.
You want to win, though, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, in negotiation land, if I could get a nice fat funfetti cake and throw it in my backpack, and not the modern funfetti, old funfetti, because new funfetti is horrible. But if I could have the new modern or old funfetti in a backpack and show up for every meeting, you'd win. 100% closure.
And it really, you're right. It doesn't really matter as much the food. It's that law of reciprocity that goes on in our brains.
Mm-hmm.
When you do something for somebody, their brain is obligated to do something for
it's
you.
like they say one of the things is, the things that somebody needs to have in order to really work with you or close a deal is they need to know you, like you, trust you.
Mm.
And what better way than to, you know somebody, you sit down and have a meeting with them. You like them because, hey, you're having a nice conversation. And they trust you because, my God, why would I eat your food if I didn't trust you?
Solid point, right?
Yeah, because in olden days or, whatever, you could be being poisoned or something, maybe that's how you close the deal is by killing your competition. But I think that's really interesting.
Yeah,
point.
we eat things in boxes and squares here, but other cultures, it's a more round approach. So my students from the Middle East would bring in these giant platters and everybody would eat with their hands. And they thought it was strange that we as
have your
Americans
own plate,
were like,
you don't touch
"Ew,
other people's stuff. Well, in the Philippines, I lived there for a while, and they would do lechon, and it's you go up, you grab pieces of meat off the pig sitting right there, and you just help yourself, and it's like a big community thing, and we need more of that in America.
That actually goes back to the military, because there's new research out that shows that a lot of this PTSD, anxiety, and depression comes from being cut off from the herd. In the military, that's a family, right?
Sure.
They know what their purpose is. They're all together, one for all for one. They come back here, and what is it? It's like every man for himself.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, it's like you had this really tight bond,
Right.
you had your family, and now you've lost them.
And
As a matter of fact, they actually have a term for it, and they call it crawling into the emotional cave. And that scares a veteran more than anything if one of his brothers crawls into that cave, because generally speaking, and I'm getting this from my veteran friends, they don't get out of the cave unless they put a gun in their mouth. So this communication, this feeling of support, this feeling of community, it's real. And they definitely feel cut off.
Right.
They've lost their purpose, they've lost their support, they've lost their identity.
Yeah.
And when they crawl into that emotional cave, that's where the serious
Well, yeah,
damage
it's interesting when you
happens.
talk about it like that, because I mean, it makes perfect sense, really. You know, I mean, once you've sort of been through it with a group of people in the military, you've faced life-threatening things and just really difficult scenarios or whatever in life, and these people have been with you through the thick and the thin, and they were there to have your back and all this stuff. I mean, you've grown to depend on one
Right, they're
another.
brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
right?
and maybe even tighter, like, I mean, some other level of connection even.
Right.
And so to break that off and just say, all right, well, you're going back to Minnesota, bro. We'll see you.
Yeah.
Like
Have fun at Walmart.
Yeah, I can totally understand how that might, cause problems for people.
Are
That's
there like
interesting.
community groups and places that they can go outside of the VA, or is it just pretty much the?
That's what we're trying to work on. Is a lot of these military guys they're not going to reach out, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty alpha
One
in their
thing they
approach.
don't do is ask for help. They really struggle with asking for help.
But
That seems to go back to that military training, right?
Right.
You've got to figure it out on your own.
But what we've learned is that it's our job as like common citizens to reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Or say hi in the gym, or say hi on the street. And a lot of friends that I have talked to want to be able to do that. They just didn't know that they had permission to say to a vet, like, hey, dude, how you doing? Thanks for your service. Just that can delay somebody's like suicide attempt for a day, which could give them like a lifetime, actually.
Yeah.
So it's really about us reaching out in appreciation. These guys are coming back to an unappreciative, like spoiled, rotten society who's like, they come back and they're like, what did we fight for? Like, what were we fighting for? Like,
Well, yeah, and we have a long storied history of doing that to our veterans. The guys in Vietnam and the guys in World War II, even. And so I mean, it's interesting that we've managed to do that for so long to the people who actually protect this country. So I mean, it's such a weird dichotomy of things.
So it's really become our responsibility, and Jason's really good at that, at reaching out to these vets and just saying, hey, how you doing? I have a story. My husband works with a vet, and he recently saw that he was kind of just like sinking a little bit, and he just texted him and said, hey, dude, how you doing? I'm thinking about you. It was life-changing for this kid. Like just that, just that reaching out and saying, hey, I see you, I care about you. They don't need a lot. They don't want a lot, but every one of them is expressing to us they do want people to just reach out in just a friendship.
Well, I mean, at
style.
least be empathetic for what they've done for you. Like, I mean, you may agree or disagree with the reason they were at war or whatever, but nonetheless, that person still stepped up and put themselves on the line for, you or for the country, and I think it's, really key. I mean, like, for example, in our family, like, I didn't serve, but my dad did, my grandfather did, uncles and everybody did. And our boys are just trained. If they see anybody in uniform, especially my youngest, he's the best about it. But he'll walk right up to like a cop and thank him for everything
great.
and stuff. And
But it's just like he's not kidding. His son is
the
so
youngest
great.
is out of control. He'll look for any reason to talk to anybody. But he's pretty respectful to those guys, and I think it's pretty great because we don't, obviously we're not. My dad passed away when I was pretty young and stuff, so he hasn't had like a heavy military influence in his life, but he still knows enough to go. Talk to these people in uniform and stuff. He's managed to glean that bit.
Well, when we see it in these cases where when people get isolated or isolate themselves, it does not turn out well.
Sure.
And whether it's bullying, whether it's isolation with somebody in the military.
It seems like it would be anybody who's experiencing that set of emotional characteristics.
Right.
I mean,
Well, even Ryan and I, we're kind of stuck on our computers all day, and for a long time he would go and just go to work and be at work all day. I would be sit here and code for hours on end and not have any communication. and we've both talked about, you know, just being in a co-working environment like Access or Kiln or whatever place you're at, just having the communication and the camaraderie of people around you really helps out.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, not to beat on the Spanish horse too much, but for me, like Mike was saying, I mean, all of my 20s, basically for 10 or 11 years, I sat there nose down on my computer trying to develop a business. I was a designer by trade, and so I spent my whole time doing that. And in those years, you know, my friends were out partying and having relationships and getting to know, you know, building kind of the foundational stuff. Well, I missed all that. Luckily I'd found my wife early, and we started a family early and stuff like that. So, I mean, I at least had some familial support system, but I missed out on a lot of sort of the spoils of youth. And after we brokered the relationship that became our partnership in Spain, and I went over there for the first time, and I saw the way that they interact with one another, and the way, you know, like we're talking about with the food, and just the way they embrace humanity, and the way they want to be around one another. And it's nuanced, you know. I mean, there are plenty of people here that have great families, but there's a tangible difference. And for me, at that moment in my life, it was like a light bulb flipping on. You know, for me, it was like a complete transition from this life of seclusion that I've lived to, oh my God, I must know everyone now. And so, I mean, all the way down to the core ethic of our business has changed, like where it's relationships first, the rest will follow. So
great.
You know, and so it's been a big thing for me. So, I mean, I talk Spain a lot because it's been really influential in my life, but this idea of developing those relationships and getting out of seclusion, for people like me that are naturally introverted and would, I mean, for years would have just stayed behind the computer, it was a big step for me. And for people, you know, coming back from military service who've had a good 6 months to sit in their crappy apartment and say, you know, God, nobody needs me here. Why am I here? You know, I mean, after 6 months of that, you know, to have a breakthrough like this where they can discover a relationship, I mean, I can see how it could be wildly impactful for somebody.
Very much so. And it's the little things. Really, they're saying, like, you would not believe how little it takes to form a connection with somebody. And it's, you know, Jason's got tons of stories of these guys who you see it in their eyes. You see, like, they're a loner. And, you know, it's not my place to judge, but it is my place as an American to say, like, hey, thanks for your service. Thanks for what you've done. That makes a huge difference to them. It may seem dumb to us. It may seem like not worth your breath, but it really is reaching back out and connecting us back up. I took my daughter to Paris last summer, and she got to see that communal, you know, like everybody's hanging out with everybody.
Well, and it's a little different for people. Like, my wife is a super extrovert. Like, she's like an A+ type, I always say. But, like, even for her, being over in Spain was different. Like, you know, she's not uncomfortable being around people, and like those kind of barriers that were difficult for me in the beginning, she didn't have to overcome. But the closeness was almost like too much for her even. And like our boys, for example, because we took them over to Spain, and we were over there for about a month with some family friends and stuff, and all Spanish friends. And they, you know, were constantly patting the boys on the head or helping them with this or that, or, you know, giving them little hugs and kisses or whatever it was. But like always had a hand on the kids. And I remember my oldest boy liked that. Like, he's a kid that likes the cuddles and likes the, you know, the emotional attention. My youngest finally came up to him and he's like, they won't stop touching me. I don't know what to do about this. You know? And so,
it's like a toy.
Yeah, so it was so funny just, you know, watching how, you know, I mean, that whole concept of it takes a village is really real over there.
Don't you think that we're changing here in the United States? I think, like, with the change in social media and the change in housing, people are kind of taking on that more communal, like, approach to business too. Like,
no, it's true.
You can't reach it. It's far more effective for us to talk to people.
Well, I can't even tell you, like, my neighbors' names when I was younger. Like, we just never even talked to our neighbors. The ones that were right next door to us, we knew. But within 2 or 3 houses, I didn't know who they were, didn't care. And it's weird to think that, you know, like, they're human too. You can go be friends with them. You can have a community right next door to you. It doesn't have to be a church.
Yeah. It
doesn't have to be, you know, what your gym only. You can have friends. you can meet
and I mean, like, to that end, I mean, like, I've got a couple products and things that I'm working on that are all sort of centered around this premise that we've reached a point of technological, like, saturation where, you know, now everybody's got their iPhones. We've lost the novelty of, you know, being able to use a touch screen, and, you know, it's still there and it's still growing or whatever, but it feels like we're getting to a point where we're starting to look for something tangible,
Right.
like something that we can grab onto. And I think that's why you're seeing like an increase in, craft beers and beard oils and
Barbershops.
things that are more experiential,
Right,
because
exactly.
there's the supercuts version of a haircut, or you can go pay some dude $50 to really work on your head and
And have a
spend some
good
time.
conversation while he's doing it.
Yeah, and I think that these
That's so
tangible
true.
experiences are sort of a hunger that is coming out of this disassociation that we had for so long, where we were starting to step away, or we felt like we didn't need anyone because we could do it all through Facebook or whatever. And now I think that just sort of the human condition is that we're starting to hunger for that again, and that's why you're seeing a rise in the co-workings and these kinds of things where we're all working together again. And of course, nothing's absolute. It never fully went away, and it never did whatever. We sort of are ebbing and flowing, I think.
But I think your kids are more skeptical of social media than we were, because like they get like, oh, that's fake. Like that's somebody's like trying to portray their best side, which isn't accurate. I know my kids don't fully trust social media, and they don't use it. They actually don't use it as much as I do.
Really?
No, they're very, very communal in nature. All of them. I have 7 kids, and
They have specific groups they go to.
they have specific groups, and they would much rather be doing something in person than
and I think
online.
that's great. I think, especially for the kids that have grown up with this technology and stuff, they're extra savvy, things like that. It seems like a lot of people in my age group, or I hear a lot of people that are sort of in their mid-30s or something, that have had sort of maybe half the life pre-internet and half the life post-internet, still watch that social media, and then they start feeling pretty bummed about where they're at in life, and sort of back to this PTSD and the way people are feeling. Well, maybe not PTSD, but the anxiety and depression part. I think that stuff still does quite a bit to contribute to it. Maybe not as much as you would bully a little kid if you're a little kid on social media. But, if you're in your 20s or maybe, early 30s or something, and you're just seeing the guys cruising around in their Ferraris and they're doing this and that, and everyone's on a beach all the time, and, your crappy existence, in Cleveland with your broken Daihatsu, it's like you're not feeling real great about
Hitting a little
things,
too close to home.
Well, I mean that's common, right? I mean, that's what most people are. Most people are living like a pretty mundane, boring.
Yeah, well,
day-to-day
and that's
existence.
the problem too. Is so are all these people on vacation?
Right.
They just are on vacation, and then they're sharing their photos for the next 3 months. I mean, they're really at home punching the clock at the factory or whatever.
That's a good point.
But if all you're seeing is everybody in their best moment, it's I think it can be a little bit sort of. I don't know what the past tense of downtrodden is, but it can sort of like beat you down, and make you feel like what you've done isn't good enough, or you're not, accomplishing what you should be. Because my God, everybody at my age has a Ferrari right now. I had no idea, but apparently they do.
I think this is such a fascinating conversation, because you can see why the vets are feeling the most downtrodden.
Well, and that's what's so funny, right? Is I'm sitting here talking about stupid Instagram and people with their Ferraris or whatever. I'm yet to have a bomb go off near me, So my version
and not be able to talk about it.
My version of anxiety or PTSD is a joke compared to the kinds of things they're having to endure. But it is funny how just in society as a whole, we're all going through this, or many are going through these kinds of problems, and the care that we should be taking of the individuals going through their dumb little social problems, is seeming to take more import than the people who are actually experiencing hard things in life.
All I got to say is go back and listen to the last 5 episodes on your guys' podcast, and some of the stories that you hear are really eye-opener for the layman who isn't in the service and hasn't had to experience anything that these guys have gone through, and then hearing how your products are helping and how Next Set is just a good thing in general. It's really, really neat. So.
I would add not only the actual veterans who paid that price, we've done the spouses or the significant others of the veterans.
Yeah.
You want to have some
the Next Women series.
And very heart-wrenching and eye-opening experiences. These wives of the veterans and what they go through, they have a form of PTSD of their own, because they've gone through the night terrors, they've gone through the anger, they've gone through the depression of their spouse, and they're the one trying to hold the family together.
Yeah, they've got to hold down the
hold
fort.
him up, hold the kids together, keep this family moving. Their stories are, in my opinion, just as impactful as the actual veterans. It is a very heart-wrenching, tear-jerking experience to listen to a wife of a veteran tell her view in her side of the service of her husband.
That's part of the
Yeah,
equation.
that's really interesting.
You don't really think of a lot of times.
To be honest, they use the product just as much as the actual veterans.
Yeah.
They need it.
I've actually been using it recently, and I'm not the committed guy where I take it every day because I just forget. And what happens is I'll leave it on the counter here and go home, and then over the weekend I don't have it. So I don't think I have enough of a back history or anything to actually really comment on how it's affected me. But from what I've heard is it's kind of a gradual. You don't notice the effects until you don't have it.
Right.
Correct.
It's like food.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
no.
it makes sense, right? I mean, we're trying to patch all these gateways and all this stuff in your brain. I mean, I suppose it takes a minute. You know?
Well, it's called
not
brain
just-
chow for a reason, and it's like food. Like food is slow acting, right? Although most of our vets feel it within 2 or 3 days, so they're really deprived.
And I would say that's because their brain is so starved and so deprived that when they get something in there, it really wakes them up. For, let's say, the quote-unquote normal person, yes, you're right, Mike. It's going to be very gradual. I would say don't even think about doing an evaluation until you've been consistent for the first month, because it is all natural, because it works with your body, in harmony with your body. Your improvement is, you're going to go, yeah, am I? I think. I don't know. Get off it.
Yeah, the people around you, are the ones that will tell you, like,
Really?
what?
God, Mike, you've been so pleasant lately.
Yeah.
You were such a dick before.
To that end, when we were the guinea pigs ourselves, we here at NXT, we all got on it, right? And our other partner, John Madsen, he's like, "Oh, I can feel it. It's great." Pat's like, I think I'm a little sharper, and I'm like, "No, guys, it's not doing a doggone thing for me." And this was what 2.5, 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
Pat about came across the table and he says, "Are you kidding me? You are 100% completely different." I'm like, "What?"
Well, how funny.
So I didn't notice it, but the people around me noticed a difference.
Well, yeah, that makes
Peter's
perfect
kids
sense.
were. What's Peter's wife's name?
Mrs. Peter.
Yes, Mrs.
Jamie?
Peter.
Jamie, good
yes.
job.
Sorry.
You had your brain chow, didn't you?
Yeah, I take
She
it,
was
guys, just so-
she's been giving Revive to her kids,
Right.
and I remember her talking about one of her kids in particular who was kind of all over the place, not wanting to learn, actually had a desire to sit down and read a book, and just that kind of, it's interesting to me.
Was it a focus issue, or wasn't it like I thought she
What-
said he
Well,
struggles with words in general. Almost like to me, I don't think. I'm not
I
saying
might
this
I
is
might
what
be
it
mixing it
was.
up with another story I heard, but it.
No,
Well, it might
that
have sounded
child,
to me like he might have a little small form of dyslexia. I don't know. It was
he
that's
does,
what it sounded
and
like
he's
to me.
ADHD.
Oh, okay.
So Peter was saying that he's a handful, but on the Revive, and he takes the other supplements too. He has focus, he has concentration, he has the ability to retain information. Peter said he goes from a failing student to a solid B, A minus sort of student. Like he is actually excelling in school versus failing.
Right.
So he has tangible results from grades saying on it, we see,
Some improvement. Yeah.
and without it,
Well, and I
he's-
guess it makes sense, right? If at its core it's providing mental clarity, it's providing increased cognition, things like that, it makes sense that for a kid who's maybe a little scattered or has a little hard time focusing, that it might help sort of zero them in a little.
Well, you're setting them up for life too, because like they're, how everything is. We heard about nutrigenomics, right? Nutrition and genes interacting. So we've got this case where nutrition and genes are interacting, and it's going to affect how they process. It's going to affect how they do in school. It's going to affect how they interact with other people.
Well, and I think what's important about that too, like my wife teaches in the junior highs, and so she, is constantly getting kids who didn't get like ADD medication, for example, in elementary school. And so by the time they arrive at junior high, when most kids start to grow out of a lot of the symptoms and things of ADD or a lot of the behaviors of ADD, they haven't learned how to properly learn, and they
Right.
haven't learned how to actually handle themselves in a classroom, because they've had so many years of just being like a wild kid or whatever, and so whether, I mean, of course, back to disclaimer town, you should probably be, have a doctor diagnose you or
Right.
whatever. But if you, if something like this could provide a little bit of clarity, maybe, and maybe it's really just filling in those, nutritional deficiencies, and that's allowing your child to learn or be able to focus long enough to get the, I guess, training or the reps to be a good student or to be, all that other stuff. I mean, you're going to set them up for a lifetime of good choices, even if they didn't stay on the supplement or whatever. I mean, they're taking the time to learn the behaviors. And I think
well, this
that's
was
really key.
our main ingredient was a medical protocol that was developed in the 50s. And then researchers in Japan took it and got permission to use it for very specific medical issues related to brain, heart, lungs. And it's been approved in the United States to use. So there's so much evidence that it is necessary for the body to heal itself.
Yeah.
And we're seeing in our geriatric population mind-blowing results.
That was an
That was
amazing interview.
awesome.
That was having her come in and talking about changing their diet and then getting them on the stack. And wasn't it one guy that had 6 months to live
Yeah.
with 5 years, 6 years longer? And he was, what's it called when they put hospice? He was on a hospice care. And lived for another 6-7 years when he shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
our
amazing.
geriatric patients are seeing amazing results. I'm just telling you, some of them are dealing with diseases such as Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's.
Dementia.
Yeah.
We've had really good luck in the geriatric community with dementia. We have Mike's mom has a patient who she was pretty much non-functional and bedridden because of her dementia for a solid 3 years. She was on the supplements for 2 weeks. One day the nurse walks in. This lady calls the nurse by name. The nurse about fell over.
Oh, wow.
What? They had a conversation. I want to watch TV. I know the channels. She remembered her kids' and her daughter's names or grandchildren's names.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
And I have on my phone somewhere another patient who had Parkinson's so bad he couldn't use his hands. He's doing crafts.
Yeah,
now.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense.
After,
I mean, I imagine that, of course, with aging, our bodies begin to deteriorate and things like that. But I imagine to the point of nutrition, either in the body or in their brains, I imagine there's deficiencies and stuff that either they've carried with them for a long time, and maybe that's contributed to the medical conditions they have.
True.
And, I can't imagine if they're in a hospice or whatever, they're getting the finest foods, and being treated, getting all the things they need. And so it makes sense that there would be some reaction, and I'm sure obviously you can't, attribute every, person jumping out of their wheelchair or whatever to a supplement. But at the same time, it's incredible to think. And it seems like maybe we're on the precipice of breaking through into some brain, we're unraveling some mysteries or something that are going on out there.
Well, yeah, the research was brought from Harvard to the University of Utah. So it's not like we're making this up.
It
This
didn't
is
just come out of nowhere.
Harvard research brought to the University
Although
of
it
Utah.
does kill me that the one ingredient you were talking about was discovered in the 50s.
It was discovered in the 50s, which means there's 60 years
so,
of good
we're
data.
here solid 60 years later before we found this thing that works.
But it was a medical protocol. It wasn't really allowed to be used for the general public.
Right.
But the safety data is so profound and clean on it that we can now let everybody have it. And that's what we were after. We were after producing a product that didn't stay, in the offices of neuroscience departments, but really because there's a lot of great information about things that are helpful for people. But in producing Revive, I feel like this has been coming for a long time. We couldn't figure out where it fit because it's such an oddity. It's such a unicorn, but it really does fit within this stack, this 1, 2, 3, and they are synergistic and they enhance each other. And the military, if you're testing it on the military, what better population? They're not going to lie to you. As far as marketing, they're really going to say to you, I really like this label. I'll use it. I'll buy it again.
Yeah, of course.
No way.
Well, and, of course, just to speak to the safety of it and everything else, if there was danger or anything else, obviously they're not going to feed this to the soldiers.
Right, and we wouldn't get permission to feed it to the soldiers if there was anything dangerous in it.
Well,
it makes sense.
I think we've had, unofficially, a couple of surgeon generals look at it.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
And,
Yes, we have.
they haven't given us they unofficially have said that it's good, so to speak.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it takes time to get all these things worked out. I mean, if we've got these 50-year-old supplements kicking around in back offices that could have been helping people all these
Right.
years, it might take a minute to actually get somebody to rubber stamp it. But that's pretty incredible that you've made even that much progress in just these last couple of years.
Yeah, well, it's the people, like, changing their lives and seeing their lives change. Like, literally, I mean, you saw Mike. There was a time when
You were
Mike
saying his
was
hands were shaking
non-functional.
and not even, he was calm. He was calm as
Yeah.
I knew Mike pre-Revive, pre-Stack. Mike actually would appear as somebody who you would say had early onset Parkinson's and had a stammer. He could not complete a full thought or a sentence. He would have run-on sentences, and then he would get really anxious and start to shake, and then he would get angry, and then he would shut down. I've known Mike for many years. He says on a daily basis, he'll text me, he says, dude, you saved my life. That's his result with this. You saw him calm and as cool as the underside of the pillow.
And he's
And-
he's in college, right? Enrolled in college in a
he
really
was-
rigorous program.
He was
Yeah,
saying
he's-
before he couldn't even, like, math was like a roadblock for him, and now he's going to be graduating with a degree.
Yeah, I mean, these guys
you
are.
know.
He'd call me at 8 o'clock at night. He goes, dude, I can't even understand what the professor's saying. Let's go to dinner. Let's go. He failed, I don't know how many classes trying to do this. Now he's like, dude, math, man, I just aced my math final. Yeah, I got it. The visible, tangible change in just his life has been worth the journey.
Yeah.
That's
And
neat.
Mike was someone that was actually pretty far gone. I mean, very high functioning, but behind the scenes, I mean, for a guy who had done, 6, 7 tours?
7 tours, like
And
back to back to
a
back to
special
back.
operator, too.
Yeah,
we're,
yeah.
we're not talking the guys,
He's not
just
he's not an
engineering.
office
He's not
jockey.
rocking the soup kitchen somewhere.
Yeah, he's not an office jockey. He was out front lines. In fact, his actual job was to draw fire and engage with the enemy.
That's a bad job. He should look for a different job.
Yeah, I think he did.
His decision making.
I feel like we have robots or something for that now. Right?
Yeah, that was his job, is to actually engage the enemy and draw fire so troops, supplies, medical supplies could get where they need.
Decoy.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was a human pinata. Yeah.
That's
So
insane.
Yeah, that's
imagine
crazy.
that trauma, and 6 times over. That's the condition that Mike was in when we started this process
Oh.
about 9 months, 10 months ago.
That's soon. It's only been 10 months.
Yeah, and his first batch, 3 days, he called me and he goes, dude, what is this? He said, I can actually think. And then he started experimenting with himself, which I don't recommend, but he's about a 3-day window. He showed up a couple of weeks ago at my front doorstep. He says, I've been off. I need it. I got to have it. And there was a visible change in his comportment. There was nothing in his eyes. They were glassed over, just very drained, very drawn. So it's real, and it really does help these guys cope. It helps these guys push through and actually embrace life again. It's like he said, Mike has told me many, many times, he says, I can be a father, I can be a husband, I can be a community member. He says, I can go to the grocery store and not freak out that somebody's going to attack me. I don't have those panic attacks. Yes, I still feel feelings of guilt and depression, but I deal with them instead of crawling in that emotional cave.
Right.
And so,
Well, that's huge. I mean, from a business standpoint anyway, just being able to, I guess, not just create a good product, but to be able to get this kind of feedback from your users, I mean, it's got to be wildly motivational for one, and,
much so.
got to make the thing just, I mean, as rewarding and make you feel as top of the world as you could. Because, I mean, it's a pretty great thing. I mean, there's a lot of people selling a lot of crap in this world, and they're not getting that kind of joy out of it, you know?
Well, I mean, it's purposeful. Like that, we are not like the best business people because we want to do something that makes a difference, and we'll pop out of something that doesn't. If we're good friends, but throughout our careers, if something doesn't make sense to us, like morally, or if it doesn't line up in terms of why we're doing it, purposeful living, money isn't like what drives us primarily. It's really about like leaving a legacy of like, I built this, I did this, I helped these people, whether it's teaching nutrition or
And that's
building
that's the
supplements.
bottom line. That's what we're about now. The proof or the concept of life for this product is rock solid. Now, for us moving forward, my mission, if you will, my personal angst at this point is we are losing veterans at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
Depending on what study you look at, it's 20 to 60 a day.
Wow.
Because of these PTSD issues. For me, that's a heavy burden to bear because this works. This is
This
an
is a
option.
solution. Yeah.
And
Well,
the
it's
more
it's
we can
something
get the
that
word
will
out, the more we can get this out there, the better for everyone. It's-
We've got a lot of vets on it now that we can't bring on here just because, you know, they're still active.
Sure.
Some of them special forces guys, they can't come on. So we're kind of like, you know, when they retire, there's going to be a lot more. We've got a bunch more coming up.
Yeah,
We're gonna
well,
do
and
just
I
like
imagine
this.
that this library of guys will just continue to grow. Well, I should say guys and women. I'm sure will continue to grow because it's, you know, we've got a lot of these guys in the service. A lot of them are going to start aging out. And as they're coming out of service, you know, I mean, I guess it's probably a percentage that have these problems. But, I mean, there's not going to be a shortage of these guys.
But
you
we
know.
encourage you guys to try it and try it on a long-term basis because you live in an environment that has a lot of pollution.
Yeah.
You know, the Salt Lake Valley is not optimal for brain health.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
Plus altitude.
And altitude.
Yeah.
Altitude. We have
Elevation's
what's
good.
called a suicide belt, and it goes literally from the top of Montana all the way through Utah and down through Arizona. And
Just
that-
because of the elevation?
yeah,
Yes.
elevation.
Really? Yeah.
Anything above 2,000 feet elevation, you're going to see a significant increase
Is that
in
just
suicide.
oxygen in the blood? Or
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like we're hyperventilating, and when
Oh,
you're
interesting.
hyperventilating all the time,
All
you're not
right, I
getting
guess I got to move
oxygen.
to the beach.
True.
That works for
That's
me.
why Spain works for you.
Yeah, right.
Spain's good. Spain's good.
Yeah, I'll settle for that. Well, cool. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I think we got some really great information. If you guys want to just kind of give us, you know, parting shots where we can find the product, how people can learn more and get involved if they want to. I assume you guys would be looking for community involvement, and
Absolutely.
if there's veterans organizations or groups or, you know, just any sort of channel we could locate that might help people get this product or at least information about this product into the hands of the people who might need it. Can you tell us where to go, what to look for, that kind of thing?
So for buying product, you can go to either direct to our website at nextsetsupplements.com, and that is NXT Set Supplements. Podcasts are on there as well. There's also a contact form at the bottom if anybody wants to put in a contact and have any information on vets or anything else like that that needs help. By all means, they can reach out. We have actually a lot of people reach out through social media.
Okay.
So on our Instagram page, which is next_set, I get a lot of contact through that.
Okay.
And then also our Facebook page, we get a lot of contact through that.
Excellent. Cool. Well, and of course, anybody who has questions or interest and maybe can't remember or whatever, we'll have all this information on the website, our website as well. And of course, they can contact us and we'll pass them along as well. So that's awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you.
And I'm glad we were able to sit down and do this. Really cool product, really interesting backstory and all that stuff. And I'm excited to see all the good, you know, getting done over the next however long. So this will
Thanks
be
so
awesome.
much, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for everything, guys.